I don't want to make a long-term prediction, but I would say to people, we might be in this situation again, and diversification, whether it's a complementary part of your business or a whole new business idea, don't be scared of that. I know people say you need to niche down, but you can niche in different ways, and you can run several niches at once without compromising the integrity of another one. So, and I also think this is not a worldwide crisis isn't necessarily a terrible time to launch a new business idea or to diversify either. There are lots of people who still need services, who haven't been affected economically. So there's that part of it. It's always a good time to diversify and not have all your eggs in one basket.
The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will.
Welcome to Perspective, a podcast for wedding craves, where we sit down often with a special guest and talk about our many years of experience in the wedding industry so that you can learn from us and grow your wedding business. Resilience, probably something we've all had to learn the hard way, but let's face it, it is a never-ending battle. Whether it's COVID or the market or life, we all need to find a way of making our businesses more resilient. And we've got Melissa Love on today's episode to help us do just that. Melissa runs the design space and a part of that brand, The Marketing Fix, a monthly membership for creative businesses who are ready to get serious about their marketing and who need expert advice, strategy, accountability, and feedback. So who better to talk to about building a stronger business? This episode is, of course, sponsored by With Jack and for a limited time only, beans.ie. So Greg, what are we drinking today?
We are drinking the next coffee in the subscription. So the one we've chosen out of the 3 coffees that we got this month is it's called Bush Doof, and it's still from the Proud Mary roaster in Melbourne in Australia. And this one's Burundi Negashiha. It's a natural bean, and I've actually brewed it up on the Chemex, but now that I look at the packet, it says espresso. So it might not be designed and roasted for how we're drinking it.
Oh, for goodness sake.
How's it tasting?
Let me remove my mask and have a sip. You know what? Quite nice, actually.
Yeah. So it's
got a bit of a punch for a Chemex.
They categorise their coffees into 3 categories. They've got mild, curious, and wild. And we've went for the wild because we felt wild today.
Wow, that hard. That's terrible. That's terrible. So like I mentioned, guys, we are sponsored by beans.ie. As photographers, filmmakers, and business owners, we know the power of stories, and beans.ie do too. Beans.ie started because they knew there were so many stories about the world of coffee, and not just about the regions or the varieties, but about the people behind the coffee, the roasters, and us, the drinkers. This is the most flexible coffee subscription that we've ever used, showcasing some of the top roasters around the world, bringing something different to the table. If you've been listening to Greg and I talk for years about what we've been drinking at our podcast table, you might get excited by this because now you can join us. Curate your own monthly subscription from an ever-changing list of beautiful coffees. And because we love you so much, we have a promo code for you. Perspective15, that's Perspective15, to get 15% off your first order. That's promo code Perspective15 to get 15% off your first order for coffees with stories sent straight to your door. I kind of butchered that a little bit, but that's fine.
Not bad.
We do that ad read live just for fun. However, enough of the sponsors. Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. We're so looking forward to speaking to you today.
Yeah, and I can't get with you on the coffee thing. I hate all hot drinks, so sorry about that.
That's it. Stop the recording. No, I'm just
it's all off.
So what do you have to drink today? Anything in particular?
I'm a big water fan, so I get my 3 litres in before lunchtime if I can.
That just reminds me, I normally bring my water through here as well. And I don't have it.
Well, you've got extra coffee in the
and
Chemex.
I don't have my water. What
I
am
know,
I doing?
shocking.
Sorry, guys.
Absolutely. What is this behaviour? You're broken today. So how have you been?
Well, I've been pretty good actually. I'm very thankful that I've had a pretty okay kind of run of things over the last year. And I know it's been such a tough year for everybody, in particularly in the wedding industry. But, you know, I've got a lovely community, so my focus has really been on them, and that's given me something to really make sure I'm not taking my eye off the ball, because, you know, I've wanted to help people as much as they can to look after their businesses, whether they have to park them or try and grow them or pivot them during the last year. So my focus has really been all on looking after the people who are in my community.
Yeah. I've actually noticed an uptake in your targeting ads actually on me as well. Obviously, it knows
you're in her target audience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that just means they're working. They're hitting the right audience, yeah.
I suppose so. Yeah, absolutely.
I've just switched my ads back on actually. That after a little break, so that's probably why you've noticed. But
Yeah.
Well, they're working.
Have you been doing anything new, learning any new skills during lockdown period?
Well, I did kind of something a bit crazy. I did, you know, when everybody else was kind of running away, I decided to take a bounce back loan, and I invested in some WordPress plugins. So I've really been working with my business partner on those, just taking them to the next level. And so I've been very much refocusing on my WordPress roots and just looking after a slightly different part of the business, as well as my usual other bits too. So it's been really challenging and fun to get more involved in the kind of back into the development and coding and UX side of things. Yes.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that, because it's something that I'm not really too skilled at, to be honest.
Well, I mean, this is more of a web designer nerdy type thing, but we own a suite of plugins which help web designers with a better workflow. So if you use, for example, any kind of page builder like Gutenberg or Elementor or Beaver Builder or Divi, you can save all your layouts to the cloud and reuse them in other websites. But what our bigger vision is that actually you're going to be able to, using our cloud-based services, quickly build out pages for your website really quickly by choosing different sections and then just applying all your fonts and colours with one click. We're looking to change the world in terms of page builders, but I don't think that will be till for a few more months. We've got some work to do.
Yeah, it's good ambition though.
I know.
It. Yeah.
Oh, just hitting those small goals, you know.
Change the world.
Change the world, you know. I like it. That's cool. And it's going well, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, that exact model, it's so interesting. The exact model of how you sell a subscription-based piece of software is the principles are still universal in terms of marketing. So it's been really interesting for me to take things that have worked for me in my web design business, in my kind of template sales business, selling a membership, to see how well they translate to selling software as a service. So there's been things that haven't worked, there's been things that are working. It's just been kind of fascinating from a marketer's point of view. I've really enjoyed it.
Very cool. Awesome. Just to speak directly to our Clubhouse people, there will be a Q&A section at the end of the podcast. We are recording this session as part of our Perspective podcast. So just be aware, if you have a question, you put your hand up. We'll be using that recording. Anyway, Greg, let's move on. Melissa, I gave you a small intro at the beginning of this episode, but I always like to hear how our guests define themselves. So who are you and what do you do?
Gosh, it's such a good question, because I probably would have given you a different answer every couple of years over the last 10 years. So I've pivoted my business and evolved it so many times, which I think is a good thing. And it keeps you sharp and keeps your business resilient. Mm-hmm. But by trade, I started as a graphic designer. In fact, actually, I started doing anything but graphic design because my parents both did that, and they worked from home and they made it look very unenjoyable. They had very boring work, and I they made me work in the business from quite an early age. So I was very keen to never do that. And then obviously, you know, life happens and you get kids and then you think, actually, I would quite like to work at home in my spare bedroom. What can I do? So here I am doing the exact thing I said I wouldn't do. But the difference is I have amazing clients and have had and have a niche, which is the photography industry, which I love being in. And my work is beautiful, fun and, you know, inspiring. So I didn't choose to go down the same route they did. But so for a long time I was a graphic designer and I built websites and I started off as very generalist. The first website I ever built was for a funeral directors and then a pet shop. And I was charging, I charged £299 for that. I thought I'd hit the big time. So that's a long time ago now. And I fell into the photography niche. I had my best friend from university was a photographer. I did her website. She happened to be on the bespoke course at Aspire. Then I kind of got sucked. I ended up teaching there for a few years. And, you know, that really massively accelerated my business. And probably I'd say 5 years into that journey, I was busy, really busy. I'd had a couple of high profile clients. Had a long waiting list and I was putting my prices up because that's what people tell you to do when you've got a waiting list. So, and the more I put my prices up, the more I realised I was actually working not with the people I really enjoyed working with, who are people kind of just starting, who need the help the most, who are getting started on their journey. And I felt myself saying to people who were kind of a year into their business, do you know what, you shouldn't spend $5,000 on having a website for me. That's wrong. Your business is going to change and evolve. Don't book me. And it was kind of crazy. I was starting to turn away work because I was a bit kind of burnt out and not really working always with the people I wanted to, which is when I launched the design space. I wanted to democratize good design and I couldn't see people who were doing it well, or very many people. Of course, there were people doing it well, and I wanted to reclaim my school holidays a bit. I was burnt out. I was juggling lots of clients. I was telling the kids to be quiet and, you know, we'll do something after lunch. Mummy's got to do this. It was just, It wasn't a great feeling. And a lot of people will have experienced that over the last year, I know. But I'd already made, that was my big plan. And it probably took me about 2 or 3 years to pull that off fully. And and then since then, I've then, you know, I sold the templates, but people, you know, didn't know how to use WordPress. So I built a course. Then people were using the course to build beautiful websites, but they weren't sure how to use their website to market their business. So 18 months ago now, we launched the membership, the Marketing Fix. So it's almost come full circle as I've learnt things and evolved my business and taken those steps. I think I've created resources that follow along behind to help people kind of also take that next step. So I'm a real hybrid now of I teach online, I lead a community, I produce templates, and so it's hard to be pigeonholed, I suppose.
Yeah. So you sort of said you didn't want to get into that line of work because of your parents, but then you sort of love now working with the clients that you do and with clients in the wedding industry, and you fell into that. But how did you know that those were the right clients for you to work with?
Well, it's such an interesting question. Before I did that, I actually had a colossal business failure, which I'm really glad about now, because if it had succeeded in a really mediocre way, I'd probably be doing something which I didn't really love. And before I went back into design, I was very kind of, I was active in worked in hotels, then I had a job working for the school food trust on nutrition, and then I got the opportunity to invest in this is slightly digressing, but an organic vegetable box scheme and organic food delivery in the local area where I lived in Brighton. So my husband and I, and bless him for his incredible support, invested a lot of money. It was £30,000 into this scheme, and it utterly failed. It was just the wrong time to do it. So, and we lost all that money, and I know, I can talk about it now. It's quite a long time ago. But
I was going to say, you didn't give us a date, so that could have been inappropriate, but yeah.
No, it was 10 years ago, maybe a bit more.
Okay.
12 years ago. But
the scars are healed.
What if it had kind of succeeded averagely? You know, it did okay. I made a living from it. You know, I would have been stuck doing something that I didn't truly love. And just something I thought I should do. So it's a blessing. It took me a while to call it that, but it did hurt quite a lot for some time. But it is a blessing, and that's why I think I've encouraged people over the last year to say, well, you know, sometimes you've got nothing to lose. and everything to gain by trying something new, by trying to pivot your business. It's okay to try something. Perhaps don't sink 30 grand in it straight off the bat, but, and that's what kind of took me back into design, which, I felt like, well, my husband actually said, you need to actually now go and get a job. And I was so determined not to get a job. I went to him with another harebrained business kind of scheme, which was to have a magazine, a little mini glossy for my local area. Right. And to his eternal credit, he didn't go, you're crazy, you need to actually earn some money. He said, well, how about we give it 6 weeks, but you then need to start bringing in a couple of grand every month, or you will actually have to go out. And at that point, I was only really qualified to go and run hotels, which isn't very family friendly. So I said, all right, I can do this. I have the design skills. So I mocked up this magazine. In retrospect, it was just kind of a load of mock-ups in an A4 folder, but I was absolutely relentless. And I went out and sold the ad space in this magazine, and like a woman possessed, dragging my tiny children up and down high streets of Sussex in a pushchair, till I'd sold out the whole magazine for 6 months. I made everyone sign a 6-month contract. And I kind of, at the end of that 6 weeks, I said to my husband, I've done it. I've got to make it happen now. I've got all their money. Here's the money. And
Yep.
And we did it. So, published a 10,000 copy magazine, had it distributed, made the money, and bought myself this amazing 6 months of breathing space. And then I built the magazine a website. Then the people who were advertising in it wanted websites. And suddenly I had this incredible opportunity to create. I was literally, that kind of sketch about, wrote the theme tune, I did everything. I designed the ads, I wrote the things, I took the cover photos, I taught myself photography by going on a 1-day course and borrowed someone's camera because I just couldn't afford to outsource anything. It was hilarious. But, that's when the websites kind of started to take off, and then I kind of fell into that photography niche. And, I'd been at the point where I was going to franchise the magazine to other areas. And my husband said, what are you doing with all this photography? What's going on? 3 months ago, you were going to franchise this magazine. Now you're talking about this is the thing. And so I got invited to speak and have a stand that was paid for by someone, bless them, at SWPP. And I kind of said to my husband, I'm going to go to this photography thing. I don't even know what it is, but I'll go and just see what happens. And he said, look, you have to come back with some bookings, like let's say 5 grand worth of bookings. Otherwise, you're going to keep neglecting the magazine business. There has to be a decision point, a crunch point. So off I went, not knowing what the hell it entailed. And I met lots of people who are very, who became very influential and very helpful to me, mentors. I met Zach and Jodie Gray, and I met a few of the American kind of bigger name photographers. I met Catherine Connor, and they all asked me to do their websites, and Catherine invited me to come and teach. And I went back with 30 grand's worth of bookings. And I said to my husband, I think there might be something in this. I think there might. And that was it.
Yes. Yeah.
So we were moving to Cornwall. So I said, I'm going to sell the magazine. And I sold it for the first time I've ever sold anything at a profit. So for once I wasn't losing money. And it still runs to this day, actually. But I sold it, and I went full on into the photography niche, and that was it, really. And I never had to look for another client again, because I had a couple of incredible mentors and high-profile clients who really pushed me. So I do realise that doesn't happen to everyone. It was very much a bit of it was all about luck, and then obviously you have to deliver really good work consistently to maintain a reputation. But definitely the start I got was incredibly lucky, and I do value it to this day, and always shout out to those people who helped me along the way.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying lucky there, but it sounds like you've got a really good drive and sort of motivation. And then from what I'm hearing, it sounds like your husband's a really good sort of partner in your relationship, because I think the accountability of setting that goal and saying you've got 6 weeks and you have to be profitable probably drove you on even more to be more ambitious.
Oh, it definitely did. And I also, he was at the time, he'd left his very lucrative, high paying managing a big hotel job, and he was retraining as a teacher. So we had nothing, we had no money. And for him to kind of have that leap of faith in me was brilliant. So, but we look back on that time, and I often think, really amazing things are forged during difficult times. I was so desperate not to have to go out and get that 12-hour a day, late night hospitality job and leave my family, that I was prepared to do anything, walking miles to sell this ad space, and I was delivering all the magazines to shops, 10 high streets a month. I would go with my little trolley and my kids in a pushchair. I was desperate to make it work, and that from desperation can come absolutely brilliant outcomes. And I've found myself kind of revisiting those thoughts and sharing them with people over the last 12 months, where I've said these are desperate times, but if you have some faith and you take a couple of risks, amazing outcomes can come from this desperate time. It worked for me.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that all these lessons that you've learned, you put into the marketing fix.
Yeah, yes and no, because I've wanted to be really systematic and practical about it, because I remember the first kind of 2 or 3 years where I discovered digital marketing. So I'd already had a little taste of it. I was selling an online product, a downloadable template that I and the first few times you sell things like that, you're like, this is crazy. I've just made this thing on my computer with my fingers and a mouse, and people are giving me real money for it. And, it takes a little while to kind of really think, I can see the potential. So when it was as I kind of grew that part of the business and was thinking about launching a course, I spent 2 or 3 years just thinking about it, researching it, signing up for 1 million webinars, not really getting the nitty-gritty information of, look, but how do you do it? I bought training courses where I couldn't really still couldn't fathom out how to do it. And so although, yes, it's really good to share the mindset and the inspiration and the lessons, I've also tried to lay down really practical solutions where you say, actually use this tool. Don't spend a year trying 7 tools like I did. Just use this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't even remember. I'm going to butcher this, but the person who invented the light bulb, Thomas Edison?
Yep.
Is that right? Yep. Are you sure, Greg? I'm not sure.
I said yes, and then I panicked that I was wrong.
I'm pretty sure one of his quotes is, because he had so many failed attempts at trying to invent the light bulb, he's like, well, now I've got 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. But those are more important lessons than, I've actually made the light bulb.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I do wonder, you're helping people with their business. What do you find people struggle with in business the most?
Now, this is a really interesting topic, because I am a huge advocate of doing what I call emotion-based research. And anyone who's in my membership, and I can see a few people in the group are here listening, they will know that I bang on about this constantly and hound them all till they've done it. But you need to know the biggest things that your audience is struggling with, so you can take the very language they tell you and you can plug that back into your marketing and the things you say, whether it's in copy on your website or your social media posts or writing a sales page. So I do happen to know exactly what my audience struggle with the most, because they're the 3 key pillars of everything I produce content-wise. And if you think about those ads you've been targeted with this week, you could just, the next time you see one, you'll have a look at it, you'll see that it relates to one of my 3 pillars, so 3 pillars of content. And the first one is a lot of people, especially in the photography industry, struggle with mindset around imposter syndrome and thinking, well, who am I to try and do this thing to use these kind of big marketing techniques that bigger businesses and more successful people use. So, and as someone who is self-taught, I don't have a degree in what I do at all. We've all been there and all struggled with it. And particularly as you make yourself more visible, you stick your head up a bit and say, oh, sorry, it's my phone. It's the landline.
Okay.
Oh my God.
A landline? Oh.
That's one of our listeners calling you directly. Stop talking about this. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So that's one of the first things that turned out to be a bigger thing than I expected. But so I do spend quite a bit of time talking about mindset in the community. The second thing is people get what I call tool blind. So, they know they need to maybe grow an email list, but, they start researching something and then there's 3 or 4 options and then you just kind of give up and do nothing because there's too many things to choose from. So they want to be told what to do, what to use to make this work and why this is the right choice. People want less choice rather than more choice. And the third thing is time management. And this comes from a lot of people who've built a small business and who work on their own, where actually you're not really on a day-to-day basis accountable to anyone. So it can be really hard to put structures in place so you use your time effectively, that you plan annual goals, break those down into projects, broken down into tasks. So what you end up doing is what I call luck marketing, where you're just posting randomly on social media when you've got time, and that is your whole marketing plan.
Yeah.
So it's about intentionality. And if you think about it, actually 2 out of 3 of those things are actually real mindset issues. So although most people join the membership to be told, use this tool, do this in this order, actually what they really need is a lot more kind of work on mindset. So those are the 3 things that people really struggle with. I do review that all the time. Obviously in the last year there's been some other things. People haven't been struggling with time anymore. People have had more time on their hands. So people's struggles do change. And that's why over the last year I've created quite a lot of content around pivoting your business, because that became so you only know these things if you keep surveying your audience and asking them what they're struggling with. So that's a big push of mine. And people who are in my audience know that I do ask them all the time what they think about X, Y, Z thing, or can they fill out this short survey. It's absolutely crucial.
Yeah. I do want to go back to something you mentioned, emotion-based research. I've actually never heard about this.
Okay. Well, people, if you think the best analogy is, people think they make buying decisions rationally, and the best example is when you buy a house. So on paper, you're looking at Rightmove, you're like, oh, it's got 4 bedrooms, that's what we need. That's a rational decision. It's near a good school. It's got the garden that we want. It's got a kitchen diner. And you kind of go through this laundry list of, yes, that ticks all the boxes. Let's go and make an informed decision about whether or not we should buy this house.
Yeah.
The minute you walk over the threshold of the house, you're thinking, oh, that can be so-and-so's bedroom. And oh, can you imagine, in the summer we can open up these doors and just walk straight out to the patio. It's going to be amazing. You instantly transition from someone who's rational. And that's why people kind of fall in love with houses and end up paying more than they're actually worth, because they fall in love with the house, and it becomes this entirely emotion-based decision, which is crazy. Because this is the biggest purchase you ever make in your life. And it happens with big purchases like cars and houses, where you abandon all reason and you're entirely governed by your emotions. And actually, this happens at all scales. This is why people have to have a certain dress that they've seen, or a piece of clothing, or a fragrance, photography isn't kind of one of life's essentials like food or shelter is. So, it's on that scale of how do you work out where people's emotions lie around this kind of product. So, no matter what kind of product it is, there's always emotion involved. So that's why you have to know the things that people have the most emotional response to. So wedding photography, and I'm just going to give some common ones. It is going to vary depending on your niche or your audience, but people are going to be worried that you might miss a key moment in their wedding day, and that's a common one. They might worry how they're going to look in the photos. They might worry that the photographer is going to be very obtrusive and they won't get on with them. So you have to survey your audience to get the exact words back. But when you get those words, you'll see that people, when you analyse it, and I've got a little survey, a Google form, which you can just grab the link to, take a copy and send it out. It takes about 2 minutes. But when you see all the responses in a spreadsheet, you can look down and say, well, I can see this kind of idea is being repeated again and again and again. They are saying this again and again and again. And whenever I do this analysis with people in my membership, when I help them look at their results, we just take a highlighter pen and go, yep, there's pillar number 1. Here's pillar number 2. Yep, here's pillar number 3. And you see the same emotions represented again and again. And then you can literally take those words that people have said and just plug that straight back into your copy and into your captioning. And of course, people are then, instead of you saying, I'm going to try and help make you read this copy with your rational head on, like, here is a picture of a wedding I went to and it was very nice, and it was made sense to take the photos in this great location, and that's all well and good, but that's like trying to sell them a house based on kind of rational. But if you take their emotions and say, I know how worried you can be when you are getting married in the winter and you're worried about the rain. I wanted to just share with you that this epic shot is made much better because of the rain. I won't, if this happens to you, I feel full, I know that I can build something absolutely beautiful out of raindrops. Yeah. And, that speaks to a deep worry that someone might have, and they'll think that, and that positions you as the expert who they're going to trust over someone who has this boring kind of ABC type caption on their social media or on their blog post.
Yeah. I do find, we have a similar approach with like for clients, because we do obviously a lot of elopements, and rain is that big issue, So we're always like, yes, but it's going to look so good and it's going to actually be really fun being up a hill. And I know it doesn't sound very fun when you're being blasted with rain and you're wet but it's actually really fun and it's adventurous. And so, yeah, that's cool.
It just gives you a prism to frame every single thing you post or make public, on your website, social media, blog posts. It gives you a framework to always make sure everything you do refers back to one of those content pillars.
Yeah, okay, that's very cool. I'm just going to draw our attention back to the Clubhouse listeners. Thank you very much for joining us. Just so you guys are aware, this is being recorded as part of the podcast, the Perspective podcast, and there will be a Q&A at the end. So if you want to ask Melissa anything, just put your hand up and we'll invite you into the room. But yeah, let's continue, Greg, with an ad break.
With Jack was designed from the ground up and is tailored specifically for creatives. Whether you provide a service like design, development or photography, or offer advice to clients, With Jack is for you. It's focused on creatives. Insurance shouldn't be complicated, so With Jack has made every step easy. You'll deal with one form and talk to one Jack as you sign up, get covered, and move on with your day. With Jack is all about bespoke insurance for creatives. Simple. That doesn't mean more forms or faff, it means less. It's not about endless features and stale service. It's about one solid policy and the personal touch. Bye-bye unnecessary fuss. Hello, creative friendly insurance. Be a confident creative.
Lisa, can you tell us how we should approach building a resilient wedding business?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think what you have to do is make sure that you have safeguarded all your kind of easy wins. So I do, and it's a bit, I do see people who are what I'd call leaving money on the table. So if you think how hard you work to get someone to the inquiry stage, what you need to do at that point is go all out and treat them kind of like a VIP. So the first part is definitely safeguarding and any kind of existing income and making sure you're squeezing the most out of every booking. So it is having that kind of. So let me just talk to you about kind of the components of that, and it's something I call the kind of VIP inquiry experience. So what you want to do is in that time that they come to make an inquiry with you, you want to surround them, and I call it a little bit being famous in their feed. So you want to do things like basic retargeting. So if they hit your website, it triggers some, as I've said, emotion-based posts which kind of speak to things they might be worried about. So they build up this picture of you not selling to them, but just reassuring them as an expert at what you do. So if you hit my website, if you look at some of those posts you're being targeted with at the moment, most of them aren't selling anything. They're just saying, have you thought about this? Or they're giving away knowledge for free and positioning me as an expert. And that works for any kind of business. And then also it's making sure that you are removing any obstacles to someone converting, so that when they inquire, it automatically sends them the pricing guide, which is probably what they want. It redirects them to some really high value content posts around planning your wedding or whatever. So, and then and you can semi-automate all of that, which is something which, I teach people all the time. So that, but you still put some personal high touch things in there. So you're kind of surrounding them with your expertise. So making sure you're not leaving anything on the table or in terms of the conversion process, converting someone to booked would be my first thing. So make sure your quick wins are in place. The second thing is, and this is, there was a lot of scrambling over the last year. People going, guess what? Now I offer personal branding photography and pet photography, and it's often, and this is why this last year has been really really good for lots of people to diversify. And I don't want to make a long-term prediction, but I would say to people, we might be in this situation again, and diversification, whether it's a complementary part of your business or a whole new business idea, don't be scared of that. I know people say you need to niche down, but you can niche in different ways, and you can run several niches at once without compromising the integrity of another one. So, and I also think this is not a worldwide crisis isn't necessarily a terrible time to launch a new business idea or to diversify either. There are lots of people who still need services, who haven't been affected economically. So there's that part of it. It's always a good time to diversify and not have all your eggs in one basket.
You mentioned obstacles just a moment ago. What kind of obstacles are we talking about in terms of like getting a couple booked in? Or
so a good example would be of a really kind of concrete example of an obstacle would be, when you someone inquires and you send them an email back with like a 5 megabyte PDF, and they're like, I'm not going to download that to my phone. So, but this nice person has sent me a link.
Yeah.
This other person sent me a link to their pricing page, which I can read right now. So I'm going to immediately call them. So just practical obstacles, really thinking about, what is the customer experience at the other end? Not is what is most convenient for me, or I've had a PDF forever. I can't be bothered to change it, or it's editing PDFs is annoying, and I have to re-export it and all of that. Doesn't make it easier for your end user. So so there's practical obstacles, but there's also kind of emotional obstacles where you're not addressing the elephant in the room, where you're not saying, you've got very polite web copy, it's very professional, maybe you talk about yourself in the third person, but you're not really getting to the heart of what they're really going to make a decision based on.
Okay. Well, you kind of talked about mindset again slightly earlier, but I do want to get a little bit deeper, because I think it's maybe something that a lot of people struggle with, especially right now. But I was going through your blog, and I just want to read something.
Okay.
And so you wrote, confession. Earlier this year during lockdown, there were some weeks in my business that felt overwhelming. During that period, I had my share of screw it moments. Are you able to talk about what those screw it moments are or were for you?
Well, I think this last year has been quite emotionally confusing for everyone, especially if you're self-employed or you run your own business and you by and large work from home. So I was coping with lots of stuff going on at home, had the kids at home. I've got one child who missed school dreadfully, another who didn't want to do any work. There was lots of kind of emotional drama around that. Plus, one part, a very small part now, admittedly, was, building websites for photographers fell off a cliff. Fortunately, I had already diversified and had 2 or 3 other parts to my business. So, but, you still think, gosh, what if my newish membership implodes as well? What if everybody cancels? They didn't, and I have had, I'm so grateful that we've had a really strong, resilient membership, that people have chosen to see the value and stay because they needed it during this difficult time. But it could have gone the other way. So you have a lot of kind of emotional worry, like anyone. And there's that disappointment. I had a business that was growing very quickly to a business that was maintaining. So you have to recalibrate your expectations about what your business can do during a global pandemic. You have to recalibrate your understanding of how resilient your family is. And then on top of that, I'd also taken, as I said, I took some risks. I spent quite a bit of money on buying into a company. So I was juggling a lot of things with less time and more emotion emotional things to deal with than I normally have. So there's definitely weeks when it is overwhelming and you just think, I just want to switch this all off and go and live in a cabin somewhere where I don't have to teach year 9 maths for an hour a day, and I don't have to try and get my children off devices, and I don't have to, cancel everything I've got planned for the next year. So, definitely, it's been hard. It's hard. Anyone who sailed through the last year without any hard times, I'd challenge them on that, and there's nothing to be ashamed of about that.
No. Well, yeah. So I was kind of trepidatious at asking that question because, it is a delicate topic, and even some people might still be in these kind of moments. So yeah, I wasn't too sure whether to ask it, but I think talking about our struggles will help others learn from them. So thank you.
Well, there's actually someone who's just popped into the room who is very instrumental in my story, Jazz. We were sitting together last summer, I guess, when we were allowed to see other people, having a chat, and she said to me, "You're sometimes a very hard person to help because you're very upbeat and you don't always open yourself up to what you're struggling with because you want to be seen to be this resilient person who leads a community." So that really stuck with me. So over the last year, I've gone out of my way. Until last November, I'd never told anyone that story about how I lost all that money. I've gone out of my way to be very open, particularly in my own community, which is a very safe space, about things that it has been hard for everyone, that I've been through really difficult times in my life, but actually it's those times that have brought me to where I am. So, and actually Jazz was the person who was the first who asked me to build the photography website. So way back at the story. So, and here she is having a listen. So, I think I've learned a lot about myself in the last year, and that actually you can only keep bleeding a community if you're more open about the things you're going through. So I've been very happy to share my thoughts on all the things we've all been struggling with.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we say, there's throughout this year, and well, more than a year now, there's been a lot of moments where I think everyone's just wanted to hide away or stick their head in the sand because the regulations are changing and they can't keep up, and they just want to hide away from everything. So is there any sort of advice that you have or tips of how to get over that wanting to hide away sort of feeling and try and get back out there?
Well, I'd just reiterate what we said earlier, that sometimes the very best outcomes arise from really difficult, challenging situations, because situations like this put a pressure on us that we don't normally have as someone who's kind of only as people, self-employed people who are accountable only to ourselves. So you can either let that pressure kind of get on top of you, or you can say, I'm going to take this pressure and I'm going to use it in a good way to motivate me, to push me to do better than I would have done, to move quicker, to aim higher. And actually, I don't know if she's still with us, but Jazz said, we're going to get asked about this period of our lives, and our kids are. We were talking about this for years to come. My daughter, who's heading off to college next year, and then whether she goes to university, is going to be asked, what did you do during that time? How did you use your time? And I don't want to look back, in the story that I've written for myself this year is one where I was defeated, or I want to say, look, I took a risk. I safeguarded my business. I was open and honest with people. I helped other people do that. I wanted that to be the story I was going to write for myself. I didn't want it to be one of giving up or joining in with the moaning or the fear mongering. Not that I'm saying people shouldn't have. Everyone should 100% have had a good old moan, and we all gave into fear. We've all given into fear at various points, and confusion and worry. But I didn't want that to be the whole story of my year. I wanted it to be something a lot more positive.
Yeah. It obviously does sound like you just said, you know what, enough is enough, and you're going to start showing up consistently to keep your business going.
Well, I think you have to reflect the mood, and I think what's interesting is when the whole world is in crisis, you get this opportunity to be brutally honest, where you can say to people, because some of my members were saying, listen, I want to launch this personal branding photography business, I want to launch this family portrait business, but I don't want people to think I'm just a bit desperate. I don't want it to hurt my wedding business. And my answer is, listen, there's no rules during a global pandemic. Do whatever the hell you like. People aren't going to judge you for trying to keep your business afloat or trying something new. You get to say, hey guys, due to the global pandemic, I'm pivoting into doing this, and I hope you'll support me. You get to be brutally honest. It's a pass. It's a free pass to not be embarrassed, to not have that imposter syndrome, to say I can do this, because you have to, because you're under that pressure. And, people will admire that. They're not going to shoot you down or say, well, this isn't a pure wedding photography business anymore. They're going to say, wow, look at that person. You go. Yes, So,
Awesome.
you've got permission. It's the pandemic permission to do something completely different and be really open and honest about it.
Yeah, you would like to think that any potential or any current wedding clients, if they see you putting in that sort of work and trying to keep busy during this time, they're going to be excited and proud of you that you're still getting out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it lovely, a little bit freeing about being able to be completely honest about where you are in the world or in your life and in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think platforms like Clubhouse as well has given so many people a way to express that to help others, which I think is really cool as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you come out of that kind of mindset, you start working on your business, you have been showing up constantly just to keep things going, or you've been pivoting your business or whatever it is. What is the moment where it's like, okay, I've got to take the next step. It's time to go. It's go big or go home. Like what's that next step going to look like for people?
Well, do you know what's something you often have a goal in your mind, like, and initially when you start a wedding photography business, you're going to be like, oh, I'll get to 20 weddings a year, and everything will be fantastic, and then it's, well, actually, I'm doing 30 weddings a year, but I'm really tired because I'm not charging enough. So then you recalibrate your goals. And then you get to what you think is the summit, and all that reveals is another summit beyond that. So that's what I think can be mentally tough when you're running your own business. You get to this fabled kind of summit and you just think, well, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. There's this other challenge. So having that mental resilience to keep recalibrating and tweaking your business is the first kind of piece of mindset puzzle you have to have in place. And then, in terms of risk, I'm not, although it sounds like I've taken some big risks, I'm actually kind of a medium risk kind of person. I'm not kind of
okay.
I'm not a crazy big risk taker. So, and the way I've got around that is by doing the research and testing a minimum viable product. And actually, the first time I launched a course, which is where it could have gone horrifically wrong, was I went out to a mastermind session in America, and I was in this room and with all these very famous photographers and business people. There was like Caitlin James and Jasmine Starr and all these people. And when they say never be the smartest person in the room, I was literally the dumbest person in the room. I didn't even know half the words anyone was using, talking about these fancy marketing techniques. I felt like a fool. And we had to go around the room kind of Shark Tank style and say what our big idea was. And they're all, and I said, well, I'm going to launch this course, blah, 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 how to build your own website. They were like, great. So what product validation have you done? What research? I was like, none. They're like, what, you've built a massive course and you haven't asked anyone about it if they want it? I was like, yeah, I might have done that. So I left there with my tail between my legs, went home, did the surveys, did the research, worked out that I was missing huge chunks and I'd built huge chunks that nobody wanted at all, totally recalibrated it, then sent it out to be beta tested with a few people, So I knew there was demand for it only because I'd done the research. So if you're like me and you're a medium risk taker, if you like to live in the medium place like I do, and not stick your head above the parapet, the thing that's going to help you take that, what feels quite risky, is the research and the minimum viable product. And this is, people always say to me, I'm going to pivot, Melissa. I think it's a good idea. I'm going to add branding photography. So I'm just going to build a whole new website. I'm like, whoa, hang on there. So this is not minimum viable product behavior here. This is doubling your workload for potentially a fraction of the revenue. Definitely not going to instantly double your revenue. What you want to do is build a landing area within your existing site, run traffic to that, use that to link to, see if the bookings come in. If they do, see if there's any pushback where people go, I feel weird booking this because aren't you a wedding photographer? That's when you've proven it, when you've got some revenue, and that's, you beta test it, it's going to work. That's when you can take the bandwidth and the time to do something like build a new website. So the answer is, should I build a new website when I pivot my business? The answer is almost always no.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think Greg and I have done that a couple of times where we're like, should we do this? Should we do that? And then we're doing the math like, well, there's only 2 of us right now.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't do that, Greg.
Yeah.
You're saying sort of medium risk person, but it's more like a calculated risk that you're taking.
Yeah.
Big risk.
So there's a lot of resistance to doing the research, by the way, because people are like a little bit embarrassed, or like, what if no one even wants to answer my survey? What if no one wants to even be in a beta group and test it? Who the hell am I to think I can do this thing? And you have to get over that. You have to kind of get out of your own way and just say, I believe. And the way to reframe that is to say, if I share the knowledge I have on this thing or deliver the service, will I help other people to do something better, faster, cheaper? Will it help them progress? And if the answer is yes, who the hell are you to deny that to someone? You know, you have to reframe it and say, people need what I have to give. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to let them be helped. And I'm the vehicle. I'm the guide. I'm not the star of the show. I'm just the trusted guide who can help them get to where they need to be.
Once you've researched, once you've built what people need, let's talk about getting out there in front of people. Like, how do we get market ready? Like in my head, I see this like Rocky montage. Like, you know, we're training, we're getting ready for the big fight. You know, how do we get ready?
Well, let's assume you've done your research and you've got all your language in place. You know what people's triggers are, the things they worry most about. So you're ready to. You've written your sales pages, you've written your website, you know what you want to tell people and what you want to say. The question is, do you have an audience for it? So you either already have an audience of a significant size that's going to be receptive to that message, who has the problems that you are seeking to solve, or you don't. And this can be really hard. If you're pivoting from weddings into portraits, you're going to have some audience because, you know, people get married and they have kids. And, you know, and they also run their own businesses. So you can throw personal branding photography into the mix as well. You're going to have something of an audience where there is crossover. If you are launching something completely different that is nothing to do with photography, then you might have a little bit of crossover, but probably you're looking for a new audience. So you have to mine your existing connections and decide which segments of your existing audience are going to work and are going to convert. And there's lots of buckets you can scoop from. It can be from your people who visit your website, your social media. You can feed lists into the kind of Facebook universe and generate lookalike audiences. There's all that kind of nitty gritty of at paid traffic marketing. But if you haven't got an audience at all, the only other way to grow is to borrow one. And this is a little thing which I talk about a lot in my membership and in the content, is your Dream 100. And this goes back to an old tale of Hollywood of a guy, a director who wanted to get his movie produced. So he made a list of the 100 most influential people in Hollywood who he thought would be likely to help him get it done. And he hunted them down. He, lurked outside restaurants, accosted them, got meetings with them. And he finally got enough people to get his movie greenlit, and it happened. And there's a very well-known marketer who took that concept and turned it into a marketing thing, which is you can sit down. Like a really good example is I'm just working on a new product which is going to launch. And so what I've done is I've already set up, I'm on podcasts, I'm borrowing audiences. Like I'm going to write, I can't reach 1 million people, but, I'm going to guest post next month for Elegant Themes, and they've got 200,000 people on their email list. I'm just about to do a webinar with the Elemental group guys, and they've got 550,000 live installs. So I've already hit 750,000. So I can throw a few other people into the mix. I'm doing a webinar with Cole's Classroom and Shootproof. That's another 20k. So, I'm borrowing the power. Even now, when I've got quite a big list and my own audience, I'm still borrowing other people's audiences, still leveraging those bigger audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about the people that they know they have an audience and everything, but they're not sure whether they have the time to...
Oh, I've just lost your audio there, Greg. Would you mind saying that one again?
We had a call come in, sorry.
Yeah, there was a call, sorry. What about the people that sort of, they know they want to try and do this extra bit into their business and a slight pivot, but they're not sure whether they have the time because, as you say, people have kids and they've got families, other jobs as well. How can they sort of carve out the time to do all this extra work?
This is a great question. And actually, we talk a lot about productivity and planning in the membership, and it is very hard to admit, even to yourself sometimes, that you aren't as productive as you'd like to be. When you really analyse, when you track your time, it can be a bit shocking to see how much time is really being used productively. I know I've done that exercise on myself probably about 4 or 5 years when I was trying to really up my productivity, and the amount of time I was wasting on social media and shying away from big tasks. I just knew I wasn't planning properly. So, I now have a system which is sounds a little bit rigid, but I plan in, all the big rocks first. So I have 2 whole days a week just solely for business development, for marketing tasks. I sit down every morning and write for 15 minutes social content, and I repurpose those into blogs and pins and Instagram stories. It's just, I've looked and looked and looked for efficiencies in my business, and being disciplined with my time has by far and away made the biggest difference. I've also outsourced. It's sometimes if you've done your minimum viable product research, you've had some traction, you've got some people in who've paid a small amount of money to test it, you've got the testimonials back, and you're ready to think, yeah, I'm going to go with this, but I'm worried about time. Then it's also time to outsource. So planning plus outsourcing, and again, if you're a medium person like me, the medium risk taker, outsourcing is agonizing. You've always got this opportunity cost of, look, I could probably do that. To train someone will take longer than it would for me to do it myself, so I'll just keep doing it myself. And I don't know if I can afford it. I'm cash flow risk averse. So, what will happen if I can't continue to pay this person? And so the people who are on my team, I've said to them, we're going to start small. We're going to start on 5 hours a week. And my plan is, and then we're going to review it after 2 weeks. And, you can have these micro outsource bursts where you're very honest. And I've said to people on my team, I don't know if this is going to work. I hope it does. But it's a risk, and I have to mitigate that risk by being really honest with you and say we're going to have a 2-week review period and look at the cash. Is it paying for itself? And just again, honesty, planning, breaking things down into much smaller tasks help you feel like the risk isn't too crazy.
Yeah. That we're actually going to be talking about sort of hiring a VA and outsourcing some stuff. I think on Friday that episode is. But what you were saying about tracking your time and finding where you sort of lose time is quite funny, because it reminded me about years ago I installed an app called Rescue Time on our Macs in the office, and I hadn't told Simon, so it's probably morally not right, but we were fine about it. So it tracked how much time it actually took for us to edit a wedding, because it saw when you were using Premiere Pro, when you were using Chrome to look at social media. So we could then see, okay, we spend too much time on this app. Okay, we weren't actually editing actively at this time. So it was quite good to just know that data.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're saying about scheduling and productivity, is there any, and we talked about it earlier, how people get overwhelmed by when they go out looking to find the perfect app or the perfect system. Is there any programs or tips that you have for better organising and planning our sort of day and our time?
Yeah, sure. And I'll give you a link to a free training actually for you to put in the show notes.
Brilliant.
But it's kind of lays out my whole plan of attack for a week. So I have annual goals, which I break down into quarters. I break them down into 3 or 4 big milestones, each big annual goal. Then I stick them in a quarter of the year. Then I go into the first quarter. I plan kind of a quarter ahead, and I break those milestones down into quite small tasks, and I allocate them to the weeks, and I always put them in on a Monday, give them an actual date. So every Monday morning I sit with all my meaty tasks, and I break them down into micro tasks that last no longer than an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. And I give them times all across the week. And I generally have, and if it's a marketing time, it'll go into my marketing block, which I have them all. I know when those are going to be. And I treat them like immovable, like I'd treat a podcast booking or a client appointment. I will not move them. And I have got fallback time built in. I'm allowed to do nothing on a Friday. I haven't got anything planned in. And so then if there's things that crop up, I say to people, yeah, I can't, I'm busy till Friday. Can we have that meeting on Friday? So I've become very good at protecting my time. To do that, I now use a system called ClickUp. But if you want something very simple to start with, Todoist is very good. And the link is to a training on both of those.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the kind of tools I use. But I would also say for any tool that you're thinking of getting for your business, and this is true of any part of marketing or growing your business, you need 3 things, I think, to be really, to really take a shortcut. So you need people who are on the same journey as you. They're at the same point. And you need some people who you can, I've got 2 or 3 people who I'm very close to that we talk about business all the time, and we're all at roughly the same stage. And I find those relationships, we must message 3 or 4 times a day saying, what do you think about this tool? Or have you tried that? Or I've heard this thing. So having someone on the journey with you is really important, that you really trust to get feedback. And the second thing is having someone ahead of you who can say, guys, just use this. Believe me, I've tried them all. So I've tried this tactic. That sucks. So, and the way to do that is either to hire a coach or place yourself in an environment. But, I run a membership, but I'm a member of 3 other memberships and a part of a coaching program, because I know that I need to be in an environment which normalizes success and growth and is full of people going out there and killing it, so that I want to do the same thing. And I know I need that to grow. So I have those friends who are close. I'm in the right environment, and I have a coach who's ahead of me who can say, she just came back and edited something for me and went, don't do that, do this. And I was like, brilliant, I'll use your version. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I take a massive shortcut and use the best version that I can have? So for any decisions you make in your business, having those 3 things that, it can really, really help you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But for those out there listening, can you tell us the name of those resources?
In terms of, do you mean who I coach with and who the memberships I'm in? Yeah. So I'm in a general kind of small entrepreneurial membership called Atomic, which is very, very good. I am in, I belong to an email marketing, it's called the Email Marketing Heroes. I belong to that one. I've just come to the end of, I've just paused my membership now, which was the Membership Academy, which was really a useful resource when I was launching my membership site for the first year. And I'm now working with a company called Growth Tools in the States, which is run by a guy called Brian Harris, who I met at one of those masterminds all those years ago. One of his specialisms is helping people who sell software as a service. So I specifically chose them for that, but that's kind of quite an intensive year-long coaching program. And it was a significant investment too. So I, again, as a medium risk taker, that made me suck my breath in a bit. But I'd done my research. I'd met the guy. I'd had 4 or 5 kind of calls with them. I phoned up people who'd been through that program to see what a difference it had made. So I did my research to help me make that decision as the not very brave person.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I do think these resources are kind of invaluable to so many people. And in terms of cost, for some people, could you imagine the cost of not having these resources?
Yeah.
I always think about that. I'm like, okay, well, this costs so much money, but what is the costs that aren't seen? What am I going to lose if I don't do this?
Yeah, I was talking to a member the other day of our membership, and she said, I don't think I would be moving my business forward if it wasn't for being just in the Facebook group, because you're like my guilty conscience. Every time I see you recommend something, I think, right, this week I'm going to block off the time and I'm going to get X thing done. So she said, I don't use all the resources of the membership, but for, the small amount it is each month, you're on my shoulder the whole time. Reminding me that actually that my business is important and it won't move forward unless I prioritize its growth and block off some time and really commit to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think accountability is so important when it's most of the businesses in the wedding photography and wedding filmmaking are just a solo person.
Yeah.
So it's good to have other accountability out there.
Yeah, I'll make you feel guilty. Come and join my membership.
Yes.
Yeah. Going back a wee bit to the sort of audience, and once you've built your audience out there, how important is it to understand that audience and what detail do you need to go to understand what your end client is, rather than just casting a wide net?
Well, there's 2 things about audiences. One of them is that it's not about the numbers, right? People talk about getting to, the big number that people talk about is getting your first 10,000 subscribers on your email list. If 9,000 of them are never going to buy from you, that's a terrible email list. You're going to be paying for them to sit on your list and not buy anything from you. And if you're feeding that list in, looking at their behaviours into something like Facebook to use that as a basis for an ad, that's also a waste of time and money. So you do have to segment your list and look at how engaged they are and prune it, because the more you prune it, the more effective it is. So, but then once you've got a fairly responsive list, and I've just deleted 4,000 people. That was a bit ouchy, but
Oofed.
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine? But I remember when I was, I went from just under 20 down to 16. And that took me a long time to get that many people on a list. It hurt. But, they're just distorted. They're not going to buy. I'm paying for space for them, and they're not helping my Facebook advertising. So what you can then do, which is what I've started to do a lot more, is really segmenting. So I can say people who visited this page on my website, I can tag them with a tag, and if they've read 5 articles about SEO, I know that's something they're interested in. So behavior-based marketing, where you can tag your best behaving customers. So mine are going to be someone who's bought something. They all get tagged as someone who's bought something. So they're going to be the people I feed back into Instagram or Facebook to generate an audience of people who aren't them, but who look like them, to generate a lookalike audience. So once you start to segment and seeing the power of segmentation, it's fantastic. So I can even do I've got a system that's so deeply integrated that if people completed a certain I don't do this, by the way, because I don't try and sell to people in my membership, but if I wanted to, if they complete a certain lesson, I can then send an automated email that says, well done on completing that lesson, here's what you should look at next. Or you could sell them something. It's not what I do, but so that then becomes very personalized marketing, which people really respond to. When you're sending them the exact thing they need, that trust factor, that know, like, trust massively skyrockets. And that's how you really deepen relationships, through semi-automated marketing. But by putting a lot in, you have to also have the personal touch. You have to be present in your communities and create content that really resonates with them. But, you can take your audience and give them what they want without significantly increasing your workload.
That actually reminds me, I want to play devil's advocate just for a little minute. And not because I disagree with something you've said, but just because I know that the mindset of a certain group of people might. But you said one time, the only job when marketing your business is to help others feel that choosing someone else is too risky.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean, first off? And shouldn't you market to people that make them fall in love with your work and feel that they need to have you rather than saying that someone else is too risky? Well,
firstly, you're not going to say that directly to someone. You're talking about two sides of the same coin. So, and I'll give you a really good example. I'm not going to say to people, you should work with me because I'll do a better job than X person. If someone wants to work with me, they come to the sales page in my website. It says things like, I only build websites for photographers, and I'm so deeply immersed in your industry that I know all of the suppliers you use, and I'm excellent at doing this. There is nothing I don't know about building a photography website. So if I'm not saying anyone else can't build as good a website, I'm saying I'm so expert in this that there is no risk to you. What will then happen is if they have their cousin's mate who works in IT and has offered to build a website for a couple of £100 on the side, they're going to start saying, hang on, but does he know about how I integrate a proofing gallery into my website? Or does he know how to compress images properly so they don't look pixelated? All these specific things that photographers need, I know them back to front and upside down. And often they will, over time, people will go and ask the tough questions of the other people they're considering, who will say, well, I don't know, but I could look into it. I'm saying I don't even need to look into it. I can do this in my sleep. So it then becomes a question of, can I afford not to get the right person? I'm worried now that this other person might be a bit of a risk, that I might have to handhold them, that they're going to have to do research. It might take a long time. Or do I pay more money and wait a bit longer for Melissa? Because she knows everything there is to know. And she's really confident saying that.
Okay, cool.
So that's why, in wedding photography, that's why I often kind of coach and cheerlead people I'm working with to say, you're not being bullish enough or saying that you are amazing at this. People say I'm unobtrusive, I'm this. I'm like, say, I'm a master. I was working with someone today who's, he does, talking to him, one of the members, he shoots kind of supercars, but he also does these kind of child superhero portraits and had about 3 other quite diverse genres. And I said, what you have in common is complete mastery of your field. You can do studio setups, flash, you can do it all, off camera, on camera, whatever it is, you've got these incredible skills. So I said, what you're doing is telling stories and using your mastery in this subject That's the common thread. So, you know, we were able to reboot that into, I'm a master photographer who tells the story of your brand, your family, your wedding, or whatever it was, I can't remember. And I'm brilliant at doing this, basically. There was nowhere where he said anything more than a polite, I'd like to work with you. It was just like, you have to, you know, be your own pushy mum here.
Yeah.
I specialize at this thing. I only do this thing. I am brilliant at doing this thing. I know this inside out. You know, nothing that you can throw at me is going to faze me, whether it's a 4 p.m. wedding in a tiny dark pub or a stately home with, I can handle it all, anything that is thrown at me. And it's just proving that by creating content which demonstrates that and speaks to their pain points. It's not doing anyone else down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So on like websites, photographers are renowned, and filmmakers, probably just the wedding industry, but photographers and filmmakers are renowned for not updating their website very much and not blogging regularly, because we get so busy in the peak weddings of season when there is one that it falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
So what practical quick tips do you have that people could implement just to improve their website just a little bit, that's sort of easy for them to do? If they go away today, they could do them themselves maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, on your homepage, you need to make sure that the first thing that they see isn't Kent wedding photographer in massive letters, that you're only writing for SEO. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but you need to have a really visible positioning statement which says, I create this for this kind of people and here's how I do it differently. You need to have the beginning of that boldness, that confidence, where people are going to hand raise and go, that's me, right? So the only job of your homepage is to get people to take one click and go further into the website. Kent Wedding Photographer is not going to convince them to take one more click, but this is what I do. These are the kind of people I do it for, and I'm amazing at doing it this way. Do you want to find out more? Oh, wow, yes, I do. And below that, you need to have done your emotion-based research. You can say, if you don't want X, Y, and Z, which they've told you, I love to do it this way, find out about my process, or whatever, however you want to do that. There's obviously ways to copyright that so it's not so overt, but so make sure you set out your stand on your homepage would be the first thing. The second thing would be, I know it's tedious, but do a portfolio update. And I know if you've not been shooting a lot the last year, it's easy to get a bit down about that. But, chances are you probably, when you were very busy, didn't go through and pull out your best shots, unless you're a very systematic, organised person who keeps a folder on their desktop for when you're kind of doing an export of a wedding edit, that you're dropping, your very best ones in there routinely. A lot of people sometimes batch a few into a blog, but then don't pull out their 2 or 3 best ones and keep them handy. So I would go back and make sure you've got one killer gallery, just one. You can then put a grid of blog posts targeting your niches below that. But what you don't want is when someone's got 11 tabs open and they've sat down with their partner to make the final decision on photography, they're like, oh, hang on a minute. No, it wasn't in that blog post. Hang on, there's a shot I really want to show you. Oh, no, I can't find it now. Let's go on to someone else. So you want to make sure you're giving your audience, they're the ones who are going to sell you when it comes to the final decision. Make sure they've got the tools to do that. And just touching on the subject of feeling guilty about blogging, it's better to create less content but of higher quality, i.e. These are a kind of cornerstone blog post. And I say cornerstone in 2 ways. It has an SEO meaning, and that's when you write a really long, thorough, basically the definitive article on. So a couple of years ago, I wrote a post called How to Add an Instagram feed to Your Website. And I started off with 6 different ways to do it, and then I kept hearing about more, so I kept adding it. Now, then there was about 15 different ways, and one month I looked at my Google Analytics. I'd had 15,000 hits onto this one blog post. It had somehow been ranked as the most authoritative blog post above Instagram themselves on adding an Instagram feed to your website. It still brings me great joy and a lot of traffic. But if you can have just 2 or 3 of those, and then take your 3 content pillars and create 3, and this is what I call emotional cornerstone content. So if someone books you, do you instantly, or makes an inquiry, when you fire back that link to your pricing page, not your massive PDF, do you have 3 blog posts you can signpost them to which address each of those 3 emotional pillars of content? So that's what I would focus on. It's better to have 3 great posts that rank and 3 great posts that answer those emotional kind of questions, those pain points, than churning out a blog post for every wedding that you do.
Yeah. I feel like I've just did a kick up the butt there, because on my to-do list for
It
the
wasn't
last
me.
no, on my to-do list for the last week or two has been to update our sort of gallery, our films page on our website.
Yeah.
Because we rebranded the website and did a complete overhaul maybe 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we chose 3 films just to keep it simple and sort of keep it minimal with just 3 really top good films.
Yeah.
And they represented sort of each aspect of what we do, like luxury weddings, elopements, and there was destination as well. But I feel like in the last year or so, or 2019, there's been a few weddings that could update and refresh that page. So I've been putting that off because we've been focusing on the podcast. But I've just had a kick out of the butt. I'm gonna start doing that today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I'll add that to my list of skills, making you feel guilty and ass kicking.
Yeah.
Defeater of Instagram and kicker of Greg's butt. Awesome. Awesome accolades there.
Listen, the other thing you can do, just a very quick content hack, if you want to get more blog posts out there, is I write kind of a caption, a fairly lengthy one, on Instagram every morning. That's my 15 minutes of writing. And on Friday, I just collect them all together into a blog post. It's like a totally painless way to get a load of content out.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, this has been great chatting with you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Just in case for the people who showed up late, can you tell us where people can find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd encourage you to just come into my free Facebook group. If you've got any questions about web design, marketing, we do live events. We're talking about website speed next Monday. We've got a special guest in. That's the Design Space Lounge. You don't have to have bought anything off us ever. We're just there to help. We're an education company. And start there. That's what I'd encourage you to do. Obviously, we've got 2 websites. You can check out thedesignspace.co. And if you want to learn more about the Marketing Fix, it's themarketingfix.co. And you can come and try your first month for £1 if you want to. That's kind of as low a risk as it gets as a medium risk taker. That's a very low risk.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah, well, again, thank you. People can find us at cinematefilms.co.uk. Our Instagram, our Facebook is Cinemate Films. And also we have a Patreon, like I mentioned before. It's patreon.com/perspective by Cinemate. We hope you loved this episode, and if you did, you can join us on Patreon, where for the price of a coffee every month, you can get access to the Clubhouse Q&As and other bonus content that won't be available anywhere else. If you don't have any money to give, that's okay. You're still our friends. We love you and we do appreciate you listening. You can just hit that subscribe button and get your usual podcast for free wherever you get podcasts. Maybe just consider leaving us a review and we'll even give you a shout out on the next podcast. However,
in the meantime,
enjoy your life.